This week on Scotty's Garage, we're going to talk about the Trolvo, because it's here and it's mine now. This is the Trolvo, the one and only, except no substitutes. It used to be a Street Machine Carnage project car, but after it met all its goals, we decided to move on to other projects. So that, left us with this car that we weren't going to do much with, and people made us an offer on the engine and on the diff and that sort of thing. So we moved those items on, which left us with a non-running garage ornament. And then with me firing up Scotty's Garage again, I went to the boss and said, what will you sell me Trolvo for? And he named a figure. I liked the figure. And so the Trolvo has come home with me. So yeah, I always felt this car had more in it. We went 950 with this car at 141 mile an hour, I think it was. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, it went pretty quick. And so I felt like we could possibly run an 8 with this car. Yeah, but it did need some reinvestment in it to do that. And at the time, the company wasn't willing to do that. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I think there's a whole story here to tell. So let me pull up a seat and we'll tell that story. So let's start at the beginning. This is the Trolvo. It's a 1983 Volvo sedan that we bought as kind of a package deal for Carnage. There was a guy on performance forums who was selling 2 unfinished projects. One was the Barina, which had a C20XE motor in it, which was kind of like the big block of those. Like those cars never came with that motor. So it was like a big block swap into that Barina, and we called it the big block Barina, and people loved that project. It became one of our most popular Carnage projects at that time, which was funny because Telf, my boss, did not want to buy that car, but he did want this one. So the Volvo came with a 1JZ in it, a twin turbo 1JZ motor and transmission. They were loosely bolted in place, and at the time it was advertised this as basically all it needed was a tail shaft, some intercooler piping, and the wiring was half done according to the ad. None of that was done. I had to pretty much start from scratch, but I didn't have to do the engine mounts. The engine mounts were done. It had kind of I don't even know if it had a transmission mount. I think it had some sort of a transmission mount, but we had to redo that. But yeah, the car needed a fair bit of work. And so it came home to here and sat in my driveway for the best part of a year, I reckon. So it's kind of come full circle. Yeah, the Trolvo has come home again. And at that time, it had a heap of junk in it. It did have an intercooler sitting there, quite a rough old intercooler. It had a fuel pump sitting brand new in the box. It had some cheap performance parts like a really ugly tacho and stuff like that. Some of that stuff got tossed. Some of that stuff got used in, actually the fuel pump is actually in the tank of this car right now. The intercooler, I think, went into the 2K Challenge AU. That was the one where we built the AU up against Bubba and the VT. But yeah, so there were some usable bits in it, but we had no idea whether the engine or transmission worked. In fact, the engine had no lower sump on it. It had the upper part of the sump. If you're familiar with JZs, they have cast iron block, then they have an alloy upper part of the sump, and then a steel lower sump. But the steel lower sump, there was 2 in the car, but neither of them were bolted to the car. So it was open to the elements, sitting in a dirt floor shed. And so at the time we were kind of like, wow, we are really rolling the dice here. I mean, we paid $1,500 for both cars, but it was kind of a real roll of the dice whether either of them worked, because neither of them were really working when we bought them, so we had to do some work to, both cars. But yeah, we went there, we decided to get them. It sat here for a long time, and at that time when it was sitting in the driveway, I asked people, should we name this project? Someone came up with the name of Trolvo, and I think I still owe them a hoodie, actually. I was supposed to give them a hoodie, and I never did find out who it was, but yeah, and the name Trolvo was born. And yeah, so we then moved the car into the Carnage workshop once we got that place, because at that time we didn't have a workshop. We had no workshop. That's why it lived here for a while, and so did the Barina. And then we got ourselves the Carnage workshop, and the first projects we did there were like Mr. Dodgy and the 2K challenge cars. And then after that, we decided, let's get the Trolvo in there. Let's see if we can get this thing going. And I'm actually pretty proud to say that within 5 episodes, we got that car running and driving. And I mean, this is back when we did 1 episode a month. I think we started to actually maybe go every couple of weeks, but we were starting to increase our progress and our frequency. But yeah, it was definitely within 5 episodes we got that thing up and running, and that's when we started to find issues like the turbos were stuffed. Right, so it had twin turbos, but neither of them worked. It made no boost. When we first put on the dyno, it made a 0 boost. So we ripped the twin turbo setup off it, and then we bought a Tonka manifold from Golby's, and we got one of the old turbos from the MX-5 and plonked that on, and put it on the dyno and made, it was close to 300 rear wheel kilowatt, and then we took it to Summernats. In fact, we almost killed it before we took it to Summernats because I used a very cheap brand of oil filter on the engine. It got given to us, and we're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll throw that on, not even thinking that, you know, that could be a possible problem. And while we were on the dynoing it, the oil pressure went to almost 0, and we're like, oh crap, we've killed this thing. We thought it was dead. And we actually went and bought ourselves a 2JZ, a NA 2JZ, and we were going to try and do the big engine swap before Summernats. And then I was thinking about it and what can cause an oil pressure to just go away completely. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to try something. Before we go yanking this motor out, let's try something. And I just changed the oil filter to a Ryco filter. And that's why we always use Ryco filters in Carnage, and I use them personally all the time. So yeah, we took the cheap filter off. I won't name the brand, but yeah, it was collapsed inside, and basically it cut off all the oil flow, and we were very lucky to not kill the engine. So we took it to, we had oil pressure straight away. We put the new filter on, oil pressure straight away, ran it up on the dyno. It all seemed fine. We took it to Summernats, and you know, had a blast with it. We struggled a bit because it still had the A340 in it, and the gearbox was not playing the game. It was not working very well. It had the stock converter in it. It had a stock A340 in it. The A340 was not in very good condition at all. And so we took it to Summernats, and we had a blast with it though, and we took it down Skid Row and did some burnouts. It took a while to come up on boost though, because the turbo was not the right size for that engine and that sort of thing. But we did get some burnouts out of it, even some Chris Christo style with two, you know, the fist outside the sunroof. You know, we got the sunroof working because it's got electric sunroof, this car, which is super rare for these cars. The sunroof is rare. Like having an electric sunroof in one of these, super rare. I mean, most of them are manual wind back, but having an electric one, yeah, very rare. So anyway, so we got the 1JZ in it, and it's got the A340, and we even throw it on the dyno like that, and it made 460 horsepower at the tyres on the Summernats dyno, and we're just like, holy crap, that's amazing. It was a good time, you know, and we had a lot of fun with the Volvo at Summernats. But then we come back and we went, all right, let's try and sort out this A340 problem. And everyone told us the A340s, oh, they're a great box. You can build them to 1,000 horsepower or whatever. There's two main people that build A340s in this country. And one of them really wasn't willing to help us. And the other one, you know, we just, at that point, we're kind of over the whole A340 issue. We got a converter into it. And we tried several different boxes, and it just would not work. And we're just like, you know what? let's talk to our mate Simon over at WA with all fast transmissions, all fast converters and transmissions. And Simon is a gun when it comes to drag racing boxes. So he sent us over a Turbo 400 with a bell housing for a JZ on it and a converter, all made up, ready to go. We bolted it in and the thing just worked mint, straight out of the box. So no computers to run it or anything like that. It just worked mint. Talking computers, Howtech was a big supporter of the Trolvo project, and Howtech, man, they supplied us the ECU and a loom, and like it was a 2JZ loom because they didn't do a 1JZ loom. It was a 2JZ loom, so I had to change a couple little things around, but I got that, I plugged it in. It was the first time I'd ever done a full ECU install, and you know, plug and play loom, and we got it in, got it on the engine and fired it up. I had to change some parameters in there because it was set up for the 2J coils and not 1Js and stuff like that, so I had to change some of that stuff around, but we got it working and it fired up, and man, just it showed me how easy to use Howtech stuff is, and just how good, you know, aftermarket ECUs are and that sort of thing. And yeah, so we learned a lot there. We learned a lot with the Trolvo. And so then we took it to, with the new Turbo 400 in there, we took it to Portland to race for its very first outing. It was an Andra meeting and 8th mile, and the car went quick enough for us to be talked to. Like, we were told, you cannot push it beyond where you're going. You guys are at the limit. Very first meeting, you know, like it didn't have a roll cage and it still doesn't have a roll cage. And we were like, yeah, we were kind of on the limit of where we were allowed to be with that car in its very first meeting. And that was pretty amusing to us, you know. The thing popped, like it lifted the passenger side wheel off the deck and stuff like that. And, you know, us popping wheel stands, it was just kind of funny at the time. And then we took it out to Heathcote and we ran low 10s with it on its, you know, basically its first time out at Heathcote. And we were just like, yeah, wow. Like, we thought if this thing ran 10s, that'd be hilarious. You know, maybe we could go 9s. And so we set, all right, 9s is where we want to be with this car. So we did some, with the help of Zane at Max Performance with the tuning side of things, we did some upgrades. We changed the turbo from that old GT35 style turbo. It was a GTW 3584, but it was not sort of sized correctly for that car and that engine. So we went and got a Pulsar G35 1050. Did we do that before we did the 2J? I can't remember now. I can't remember. I'm getting some stuff out of whack there. But anyway, we set it up with, you know, better injectors, better turbo, and went out there and started doing wheel stands and running high 9s. I think we went 989 with that setup, and it was hilarious seeing this thing wheel stand and the dash mat coming at me and attacking me and stuff like that. And the car got a bit of a reputation, you know, just the fact that you get this Volvo out there doing wheel stands and, you know, screaming, because we were spinning that little 1J to over 8,000 RPM, and it just loved it. It loved it, you know. Cam upgrade was another thing that we did to it, and I made the mistake of snapping a camshaft during the install, which was, again, kind of hilarious and not funny at the time, but funny when you look back at it, you know, because, yeah, wasn't really sure what I was doing at the time, and we got some help from Gerardo at GeForce Racing, and yeah, you know, we had some good people help us, and we made that car go, like I said, high 9s. And then we ran into issues with the oiling because it was a front sump deal. The oil would all rush to the back of the motor. Like when you launched the motor, all the oil would rush to the back of the motor. It would starve for oil, and you know, we'd be like without significant oil pressure for 3 and 4 seconds at a time, which when the engine's spinning at 8,000 RPM, it's not great. So we ended up yanking the 1J out, and I put together a 2JZ bottom end. So it was a NA engine that we'd bought way back, when we thought we killed it originally. So we've got this 2J NA deal. I pulled it all down. I bought some turbo rods and pistons from Gerardo at G-Force. They were just second-hand ones, but, they were in good condition. I put the turbo rods and pistons in it, because it's the only difference between the turbos, well, not the only difference, but it's the main difference between the turbo engines and the NA engines is the rod thickness and the pistons. And so I just went, you know what, if we put, turbo rods and pistons in this thing, it should be good to 800 and 1,000 horsepower if we want to go there, And we made, and I put the 1J head on it because that's something you can do, and we made what they call a 1.5 JZ. So the 1J head has smaller ports and stuff like that, but it still works on the 2J. But the benefit is that you can keep all your old manifolds and stuff. So it means we didn't have to change our intake, we didn't have to change our exhaust, none of that stuff had to change. All our intercooler piping stayed the same. It was just the fact that we had a 3 litre bottom end instead of a 2.5 litre now. And man, the 3 litre, you wouldn't think that'd make much of a difference. Half a litre in capacity difference. Oh my God, the torque of that thing was amazing. And now it was standing up, it was lifting the front wheels this high off the ground, and it went 950 at over 140 mile an hour. And at that point, we're just like, it's actually getting a bit sketchy now, because we had not spent a single dollar in the front end of this car. It had all the standard suspension, springs, shocks, everything was as we bought it in the front end. Hadn't done a single thing in that front end. With rear end, we'd changed a bit. We'd put a heavy duty diff in it because we started snapping axles and stuff like that. So we put 30 spline axles in the rear, and that was a good rear end. We could only fit a 235 tyre under it. So, we're doing wheel stands on 235s with, it was still a Volvo rear end, just had heavier duty axles in it. So it was a pretty impressive car when you think about it. Given that we had not spent a lot of money on it and didn't spend a lot of money in areas where people usually spend money on these things, it did all right. But yeah, we were kind of getting to that point where we thought the car could go a lot faster, because we made 663 horsepower at the tyres, something like that, which was pretty good out of the JZ, but the 2J, but we felt we could make more if we wanted. But, we just felt that at the speeds it was doing, we're kind of living dangerously without investing some money in some safety. So, we were talking about recoing the front end, putting a race seat in it, putting maybe a cage in it, maybe even mini-tubbing the rear end, these sort of things, and of course a parachute on the back. But all that stuff was going to probably cost $5,000, probably more actually, because the cage would have cost most of that by itself. But we were looking at $5,000 to $10,000 investment in the car that, it was kind of like at that point where we'd got good views on it, but we felt it should have got more, and it wasn't getting the views that we felt the car should have gone. And so we decided, let's put our efforts into another car, and I think we bought Superman, because we thought Commodores are popular. V6 Commodores have always been a bit of a thing. People love them and hate them. There's a big love and hate relationship there between V6 Commodores and, and we did some good things with that car, and we're going to continue to do good things with that car. So yeah, we had the Volvo sitting there. A guy came up and made us an offer on the engine. We sold him the engine. Another guy offered us money for the diff. We sold him that, because we tried to sell the whole car as a package actually. The package was going to be, it was $18,500. It was going to be the car without the transmission and without the ECU. So all you had to do was add a turbo 400 in there, and like it would have even been the just the box. You know, you would have got the converter and the bell housing. You just would have had to put a Turbo 400 box there because we needed the box for the Lexan project. So a box and an ECU, and the ECU was only a couple grand, you know, so you could probably even buy one second hand. It just had an Elite 2000 in it, and we would have gave you the program to put in it. So you could have had a mid 9-second car for just over, you know, probably it would have been under 25 grand all up. You would have had a mid 9-second car for 25 grand, and you could then turn it into an 8-second car with a bit further investment in it. So no one wanted to do that though. Everyone was like, oh, you just want too much, you're dreaming, whatever. Yeah, well, what did we ask? 18.5? Well, we've sold 16 grand's worth of stuff out of it easily, and there's still dollars in that car. I'm not going to tell you what I pay for it. It wasn't a lot, but there's a Plasma Man cooler sitting right there. That came with the car. It still has, you know, a high flow fuel pump and a brand new fuel tank in it. That's still in the car. Hearst racing shifter, whole bunch of other stuff, racing harness, all that stuff is still in this car. So it's not like I'm starting with a shell that is just useless. And a few people told me, I even tried to sell it as it sits right now, and no one would even give me $500 for it. And you're like, you people aren't very smart, are you? You know, it's just like, if I was well, I am a YouTuber now, aren't I? I'm a YouTuber there and here. So, but I just thinking, like, if I was a YouTuber, you know, then there's a few of them around Melbourne. I'm part of actually a little private YouTube group on, you know, Facebook Messenger. And I'm surprised none of them stuck their hand up for this car, because you've got an instant fan base. You know, some of these guys are really pushing to get a couple thousand views per video. And here's a car that got, on average, 20,000 views per video. You buy that car, it's instant fan base. So some people just don't get that. And yeah, you've got to wonder, don't you? So what's my plan for it? Well, I have plans, and there's plans things that I want to look at, but I want you guys to be involved with this planning too, because I was planning to buy an engine, and I stopped myself and I said, no, let's see what the fans want to do. I'm going to give you some options, because we're not just going to go willy-nilly at this. I'm going to explain some of the options, and we can go from there. But let's have a look at what we've got so far. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so we have a big hole. It has no engine, it has no transmission, but you know, it has some of the wiring that we did before. It has a Plasma Man intercooler there, 600 by 300 by 76. We know that's good for some pretty decent horsepower because it worked really well. So we can continue to use that. And actually I want to run a tape measure over the engine bay and see how wide it is, because there is an engine I'm thinking about, and I know how wide they are. Oh yeah. Well, that'll fit. It's close. But it'll fit. Yep. That will fit. Okay. Because, I mean, a few people would be like, why don't you stick another JZ in it? And to be honest, I'd love to do that. 2JZ, like a really worked 2JZ in this. The sky's the limit. I mean, the engine will power this to whatever we want it to be, you know. We would just then have to bring the chassis up to spec. So, I mean, that's an idea. I've kind of done the JZ thing though, so, but if you guys, I'll throw that in the mix as an option. Do I go a JZ? Because I can always build a JZ up. I've built them before. I know what to do. Option number 2, And I'm going to exclude LS and Barra. So not doing LS and Barra. I've done plenty of LSs on Carnage. I've done plenty of Barras on Carnage. So no, I'm going to do LS or Barra, okay? Option 2 would be the Ford single overhead cam 6. So your EA to AU motor. More specifically, it would be an AU motor. So an Intech style single overhead cam 6. That was kind of my number one choice, I think, because it'll make the power that I want. Because, all right, I should talk goals too. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. What's the goal? 8-second quarters, all right? Probably mid-8s, if I'm being honest. But I want this thing to run 8s. So we need to make 1,000 horsepower, okay? We need something that will make 1,000 horsepower. We know the JZ will do it. There's a heap of them all across the world that are making 1,000 horsepower. So we know we can do it with a JZ. The Intech AU motor can make 1,000 horsepower. Jason at Tunnel Vision has done a bunch of them, and in like ED and EBs and stuff like that, some of those cars are running 8s. I think one's even gone 7s, single overhead cam 6s. So that's a possibility too. So we can do that. Now I did look at a whole bunch of things. You know, I thought about doing a Volvo motor. I'm not going to do the red block. A few people said, oh, do the red block, but no one's making 1,000 horsepower with a red block, or if there are, there's very few and far between. I looked at, I talked to my mate over at in Sweden, who's got a business over there, GZ Racing, and they've done barra swaps into Volvos and all sorts of stuff. I said, is there any decent Volvo motors that we could use? You know, what's the Volvo V8 like? And he said, no one builds them. The Volvo V8, like, you would be one of the first to do one, other than the fact that, you know, the V8 supercar team did some. And I don't have V8 supercar budget, but they're supposed to be a good motor made by Yamaha. They're supposed to be a fantastic V8. And I'd love to do a V8 into this car because I love the sound of V8s. I've got to be honest. We all love it. I'm good with 6s. I've proven that. I like 6s, and I've made some pretty decent 6-cylinders. But a V8, whew, that'd be nice. But the Volvo V8, apparently, yeah, nah. It's, I would be kind of breaking ground there, and I don't have that sort of budget to break ground on an engine. Like, I'm not scared to do it, but yeah. It costs a lot of money to be the first. I even looked at doing Audi V8, but they had their own problems, and while they're a great engine, the whole timing chain in the rear thing is a real, you know, like, you could probably do it right if you're putting the engine in for the first time and you replaced all the timing chain hardware in the back of the motor, you probably do it right. But yeah, the timing chains are in the rear, so anytime you have to do a timing chain in those, the whole engine has to come out. So while it would be cool, and the Audis have some great motors, and the V8 is supposed to be a great motor, again, my mate in Sweden was saying, again, not a lot of people do those sort of things. And then we talked about the Volvo 6. Well, they do the what they call the B5 and the B6. They're related engines. He said that if you're going to do it, do the 6, do the big 6, which is like 3.2 litre. But when I told him the power, he's like, oh, you know, you're really pushing the limits of that. And again, there's not a lot of people doing that sort of power. There are some. There's some very quick Volvos over in Sweden. Make ours look really silly, actually. They you know, they've got some seriously fast Volvos over there. And they don't run on proper drag strips. They run on air strips, and those guys are fast. Like 7s fast, and 6. There's even some guys in 6s, but yeah, 7s is not unheard of. So that's pretty fast when you're running on an air strip. So I guess that leaves the old 1UZ. Well, maybe not the 1UZ, maybe a 3UZ, but I love that Toyota V8 platform. I've done good numbers with Carnage with the Lexan, but that was a stock bottom end thing. So I'd be talking built bottom end. So forged rods, forged pistons, go send that thing to 1,000 horsepower plus. I just ran a tape measure over it. I know they're 700 by, they're a 700 mil cube basically. So it'll fit. I know they'll fit, and maybe that's an option as well. So I guess there's the three choices: JZ, Intech, or UZ, or maybe even a Toyota UR motor, which is the newer Toyota V8. Bit more expensive, but they're starting to sort of come on the market now, so maybe that's a thing. I think the UZ's probably the way to go, because at least the UZs, there's a lot of aftermarket support for. So you can buy camshafts for them, and you can buy valves and springs and all the stuff, rods, pistons, all that stuff is available, because there's people all over the world building 1, 2 and 3 UZ engines. So maybe that's the way to go, you know. We know we can make the power, we know we can run decent numbers with one. But there's also the Aussie in me that's like, the AU Intech. So there's our three choices. I'm going to do a poll, and the people that can vote on the poll are going to be my Patreon supporters, because they're the people that are putting money behind the project. So if you want to have your say, become a Patreon supporter, and you get a say in what we do. If you're just watching on YouTube, I enjoy the support. I love that you guys are watching and being part of this. But the people that really get a say are going to be my Patreon supporters. So if you want to get a say, sign up to Patreon, and that's where you let your voice heard. So I'm going to do the poll there. I'll find out what the results are. I'll let you guys know. But yeah, this could be a thing. So it's going to be a quick thing, and we're going to have fun doing it. So we've got three good engine options there, you know, that people can choose between. I know people are going to throw engine options at me on YouTube. Sure, throw them at me. I'll look at them all, but I have looked at a whole bunch of options, and I know people will say, oh, do diesel this or do K-swap that. Not really for me. I don't want to do a diesel or a K-swap. I think they're three good affordable engine options. You know, the JZ, the UZ and the Intech, I think, are three affordable engine options, and they can all be bolted to a Turbo 400, because that's the gearbox that I'll probably use, because it's an affordable drag racing box, you know, drag racing capable box. It can handle 1,000 horsepower without $1 million being spent on it. And, you know, we'll be able to make something of that. And, you know, they're very easy to adapt to other engines. I mean, this will be 100% strip, you know, and I know people will be like, Scotty, this is too many projects. It's kind of the YouTube life, though. You've got to have multiple projects on your channel, because if you don't and you stick to one, people get bored very quickly. So we have the lockdown wagon as our long-term project, all right? This will be our 100% strip build. The lockdown wagon will be, you know, probably 70% street, 30% strip. Dad's Ute is like 95 or maybe 99% street, 1% strip. You know, once it runs a 12, it really will only get run on the strip very rarely, you know, and I'm going to build a box for that soon, so watch out for that. And then of course we've got the 12s for 2K challenge car coming up soon, so that'll make 4 projects, and that'll be enough. I mean, that will be plenty. So the lockdown wagon, long-termer, this will be, you know, our strip car, so 100% strip. I'm not looking to build a street car out of this thing. It'll be, we're going to strip some weight, more weight out of it, because I never really gave this thing the full diet treatment. So let's give it the full diet, strip it out, and make it as light as possible, throw 1,000 horsepower into it, do some suspension tricks and stuff, rebuild the front end, all that sort of stuff. We're going to do it safely, probably put a cage in it as well, and a parachute, because it'll need those things if we're heading to the 8-second zone. Yeah, it's it'll be a test of my abilities, but it'll also be fun, and I think we can run some good numbers with that. So I hope you think this is a worthwhile use of my time. I do want to get back into some hardcore drag racing again, so I figure the Volvo is a good starting point, you know. And it'd be great to have the Trolvo back out there amongst it again, and maybe we can regain our title of Australia's quickest Volvo 240. We used to have the title. We've lost it recently. It'd be great to get that title once back again. So stay tuned for updates here on Scotty's Garage. Of course, like, subscribe, comment, all those things. Make sure you support the channel either through Patreon or buying stuff through the Scotty's Garage store. So we'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this very long talk about the Trolvo, but it's also interesting and something that's kind of dear to my heart, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it on Carnage and will enjoy it in the future, is what I'm trying to say. We'll see you next time.